So, as we are a family that has 3 kids, in the Gillum household, laundry is more than an unpleasant chore. It is a wave of chaos. The other day, I actually got it in my mind, I'm going to take care of all the laundry in our house. I was just so sick of the piles everywhere, right? And so, as that coincided with a project that Pastor Jonathan was asking us to do of taking a time of solitude and quiet and reflection on the Lord, I thought, what better time than when I'm stuck folding laundry? So I took a pile of laundry that was about 4 feet wide, 7 feet wide by about 4 feet tall, and started folding. 4 hours later, finally I got to the end of it. I felt good, I felt fresh, I felt productive. I was ready to take on the day, and then I opened up my phone and saw 89 emails that had come in the previous 4 hours of folding. And so what do you do when you do something like that, where you've spent all this time working and all of a sudden you think, well, finally my work is done, and all of a sudden there's all of these emails there. Well, I'm just going to go start bragging to everybody. I'm going to start going and telling everybody, can you believe it? Only 3 hours and I got 89 emails. Now, for some of you in this room, you might say, that's rookie stuff. That's easy. I wake up in the morning and I have 170 emails. For me, it was a burden. And what I wind up doing, you have a problem with busyness when you tell more people about the amount of emails that you got than you had emails. So right now I'm telling this to about 400 people, only 89 emails. So, we can split that up. But the reason why I bring this up, we brag about these things. We focus on these things. And the question is, why do we elevate our busyness? Why does it become how busy we are, how occupied we are, how does that become a badge of honor for us? That when we look at the quality of our life, when we look at the way that we're being productive and contributing to our world and trying to find ways to be of use, why is it that we look to how busy we are? Today we're going to look through the eyes of 2 people that engage themselves with Jesus, who had the blessing of having Jesus in their home, and we're going to see how both of them interacted with that pressure of busyness and doing in the presence of our Savior. And so today we're going to be reading from Luke chapter 10. If you have your Bible, we read from the English Standard Version, but whatever version you have is great, whether you have your phone or your Bible. I invite you to open up to Luke chapter 10. And I'm going to start by reading in verse 38. Now, as they went on their way, Jesus entered a village, and a woman named Martha welcomed him into her house. So here in the story of Luke, we meet the family of Mary and Martha. You'll remember them also because Lazarus was their brother, so they were close friends with Jesus, spent a lot of time with him. And at this time, Jesus has been traveling all across the country, teaching and doing parables and healings. In fact, earlier in this same chapter is when Jesus teaches the parable of the Good Samaritan. And so Jesus has been going and going and going, and one of the interesting things that we see here is one of the big everyday realities that was a part of Jesus' life. And this might be kind of mind-blowing to you, but every once in a while, Jesus did have to stop and eat and sleep, right? I mean, I think sometimes we look at Jesus and we say, oh yeah, he's God, he can do whatever he wants, he just keeps on rolling and rolling. But we tend to skip over this when we talk about Jesus, about these parts in the story where he actually stops the ministry that he's doing to eat and to sleep. The story itself takes time to talk about hospitality, the role of hosting someone, taking care of someone in their home. And I'm the worst part about this when it comes to storytelling, because my wife Adrienne, when she wants to tell me a story, has to also tell me the context of everything that's happening around it. She has to tell me what the house was like and what dog was there and what was on the table. I'm like, just tell the story. Tell me what happened. Come on. But hospitality is a major part of Jesus' ministry. It's important enough to Jesus that even earlier in this same chapter, in chapter 10, Jesus makes a statement to his followers that if they go into a town and the house that they go to does not offer hospitality, then they're not even going to be able to minister there. They're to move on. Hospitality takes a major place when we're trying to live like Jesus, to live the way that Jesus called us to, which is our first big point of the day. Showing hospitality to others matters. Now, for some of you in this room, you're like, yeah, duh. Why do we do Thanksgiving? Why do we do things like that? For me, this was a major ministry lesson that I had to learn because In my time in youth ministry, I thought you put out a table, you put a pizza on it, that's a feast, right? Maybe have a Dr. Pepper there as well to celebrate. But it took time for me to learn, hey, sometimes it's nice to put a tablecloth on something, or maybe it's nice to not to wear a button-up shirt instead of your t-shirt and shorts. But the longer I've been in ministry, I've learned the steps that we make to make people feel like they belong matters. Because in our world, belonging is not the norm. For most of us, the places that we go, we feel that we're strangers. We feel like we're having to perform, or we feel like we have to earn our way through where we're going. What hospitality does is it gives us a place. It tells us this is a place where you are wanted, where you are welcomed, and where you belong. If you ever wonder why we go so crazy as a church on Christmas decorations, which when you walked in today, you saw the handicraft of Anita McGinnis and Derek Tackett and their teams with all of the Christmas decorations. The reality is the reason we do that is because we want people to feel like they're coming home. We want people to know they are welcome here, that by coming and worshiping with us, by being a part of what's happening at this church, you have a place. And I hope that you remember as we move, as some of you will be hosting Thanksgiving this year. In fact, if you're still in town right now, I would imagine that's a high likelihood that you are. I hope you remember that the purpose of hospitality is in the kingdom of God is that it's a picture of grace. It's a reminder that Christ has given us a place to belong, that even though we didn't deserve it, even though we don't earn it, even though we don't build it up for ourselves, He opens the door and gives us a place, gives us a way to belong. And hospitality matters because it changes people's hearts. So, if that were the end of the story, I think you and I would be pretty content today. Looking here at Jesus' thing where he says, okay, so preacher said that he wants me to enjoy the turkey and take a nap on the couch watching the Cowboys get annihilated on Thanksgiving. I think we would all feel pretty good about that if that was the overall point of the story. But the story goes on, and we'll read verses 39 through the first part of 40. And it says, and Martha had a sister called Mary, who sat at the Lord's feet and listened to his teaching. But Martha was distracted with much serving. So Martha has hit the hostess jackpot here. I mean, let's just be honest. She literally has Jesus coming to her house. And can you put yourself in that position? What would you do if Jesus Christ was coming and he was going to come to your house this afternoon? I mean, I would probably clean up, probably put on your best clothes, take out the trash. If you were me, probably fix the hole that's been in your wall for about 8 months that you're always meaning to do, but you just can't get around to it. The expectation of someone important coming to where we live would almost assuredly inspire us to fix things up. And one of the questions I have is, have you ever questioned why we do that? And here's where, because today this is going to be a very freeing, time today, full of confession and truth telling. I'm just going to lay a little truth out for you today. I am at my worst as a parent when someone's about to come over to our house. Okay, when we know that we have company coming over, well, we just fling into a flurry of activity. I have to go deal with all the bags of Easter candy that have been sitting on the counter for 8 months that have now become load bearing. I have to go and to help carry metric tons of shoes upstairs out of our living room floor. Have to put throw pillows over the ketchup stains. And here's where I think all of you can relate with me: the shouting. Oh, the shouting that happens whenever you have company coming over. I become this insane tyrant of a dad whenever I'm about to have somebody coming into my home. That doesn't make any sense, right? Why would we do that? If I'm being honest, the reason I do it is because I want people to think more highly of me. It's that it ceases to become about hosting the person and making them feel comfortable and helping them to know that they have a place, and really become more so driven by a need to impress other people. And for people to look at me and say, man, he's got it all together. He's got a clean house. His house doesn't smell like syrup. There's not trash on the floor. I think we all do this. We take the places of our lives that should be cherished, that should be warm, that should be close, and we obliterate them with busyness. That we begin to occupy ourselves, begin turning the gears, working and working and working. And these times when we should be growing closer together, and we get so worried and so nervous and so energetic, trying to make people think that we're better than we are. Martha literally had Jesus in her house. I mean, it would be like Jesus is right here, and Martha is remembering a pan that she has to go clean in the kitchen. She remembers that she has to go vacuum over here. This doesn't make sense, and this is our second major point of the day. If busyness is our pursuit, then insecurity is our idol. Much like we do with spending our money, the way we spend our time shows our priorities. We can fool ourselves into thinking that our busyness is a virtue, much like I did in the sock story, where I thought, hey, I'm going to talk about 89 emails like I'm some kind of a big shot. When in reality, our busyness is serving a fear in our hearts. Our busyness serves a fear that maybe we're not enough. Maybe we're not good enough, and maybe if I work just a little bit harder, I can cover over the areas of my life that I don't like other people seeing. The places where I feel like I'm going to fall short, the places where I know that I'm not at my best. If I just push harder and push others harder and grow busier and work more and more, I'll get there. Incessant busyness is not a sign of success. Rather, it's a sign of a fear that you lack value in your life. Now, some listening will say, well, that's ridiculous. I'm busy constantly because I have important responsibilities. I'm busy constantly because it needs to be done right. I never have time for my kids because I want to provide a great life for them. Do you really? Are we really that important that our time should be taken up every moment of every day doing? Is a constantly busy life the same thing as when Jesus tells us that he's come to bring us life and life to the full? When Jesus said that, did he mean for us to be doom scrolling on our phones all day long? When Jesus said that, did he intend for us to be staying at work until 10, 11, midnight? When Jesus said that, did he mean to ignore the relationships around you for the sake of cleaning things up in your life? When he said that, did he mean fill your schedule with every kind of baseball game or science fair or other project that's possibly there? Is living an abundant life the same thing as incessantly filling our lives with busyness? I think where we're at today, where we come into the Thanksgiving week, we begin to be challenged on that. That we have these times that come up where we have the ability to be present with Jesus, to recognize who he is in our lives, to celebrate the relationships that he put around us. And the question is, are we living our lives to the fullness of what Jesus called us to if we continue to serve incessant busyness? All right, so let's see then, for Martha, what this busyness evolved into. In the second half of verse 40, I'll actually read the full verse. But Martha was distracted with much serving, and she went up to Jesus. This is rich. She went up to Jesus and said, "Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to serve alone? Tell her then to help me." Can you imagine that? Going up to Jesus and tattling on your sister? Come on. That's crazy. This kind of makes me think, as we're coming into Thanksgiving, what are some of the best statements that we can use in our home to ruin a Thanksgiving dinner, okay? So for those of you who are saying, man, I hate togetherness and friendship and fellowship, and so I just want to lob a grenade into my Thanksgiving dinner. Here's a couple of things for you. First of all, it's not really cranberry sauce if it doesn't come in the shape of a can. That is a hill to die on, right? Here's some fun ones for the seniors in your home. What are you planning to do when you graduate? Here's another one. When are you going to start having kids? And the one that happens every election year. Hey, who'd you vote for? And then the one that Martha, I think, could relate to the best. Guess I have to clean up this mess all by myself. Isn't it amazing how in the sweetest times of family togetherness is the time when we air out our sourest grievances with the people that we love the most and that we care about the most? Why is it always during these times of Thanksgiving that we feel that we have to talk about how much better our mom's casserole was than our wife's casserole? Danger, guys. Don't do it. Why is it that we wait till these times that are literally reserved for togetherness to start biting and tearing at each other? Now, if you think I'm only talking about Thanksgiving, it's not just about Thanksgiving. Don't we kind of do that in church too sometimes? In those times of fellowship and togetherness that we feel the most free to air our worst grievances against each other. So Martha is very much in this boat, and she's angry because she's working her tail off, trying to make a great experience for her guests and the Lord of the universe, and her lazy sister is just sitting there. Now, I'm an oldest brother, and so I can relate very much here with this story, because when I have people in my home, I'm just going, I got to make sure everything is going well. And when I see someone who's not doing that, like my younger siblings, my natural response is anger, or, to use the big word, I'm indignant. I'm indignant that I should be serving and working so hard, and this other trying to make it nice for everybody, and this person is sitting over here not contributing at all. We see this transformation in Martha, because when we see her in the story, she's distracted with much serving. And it's not, at this point in the story, it's not about the serving. It's not about trying to create an environment that people are happy about. It's become about, I want that person to work as hard as I am. I want that person to be as busy as I am. And the result of the gap there is anger, is indignation, is irritation. And, some will look at this and say, well, Martha's just trying to do something to serve others, to serve Jesus. No, she's not. Come on, let's be honest about this. When we see her in the passage, she's angry because she's not humbly inviting her sister to join in the wonderful act of service. Martha is tattling to Jesus about Mary. And this isn't coming from love, it's trying to drag another person into drudgery. Martha is upset about the thing that she's having to do, and she wants somebody else to join her in that upsetness. There is no thanks or grace in what Martha is doing. And her request of Jesus is purely out of envy. And so this brings our next major point. Indignation is the enemy of gratitude. That when we come to these times where we want to give thanks, where we want to express thanks, the presence of that anger, that irritation, that indignation serves as an enemy of being able to express that. And so as we come into a season that should be hallmarked by gratitude, do you find yourself in a spirit of giving thanks for something that you haven't deserved, or expressing indignation because you're tired of being a good person? Something I found interesting, because I went through seminary and took Greek, and so every once in a while I come across something I think is interesting. One of the things I think is interesting is that the Greek word for thanksgiving, or for giving thanks, is Eucharisto, which means literally good grace. Right? So for one thing, if you ever wonder why people say, why are we saying grace over the meal? It's because it's connected back to that giving of thanks. But this is the point. Giving thanks is necessarily incomplete without recognizing grace or the charity that has been done to us. When we give thanks, it's not a reward. It's not us saying, you did this for us, so therefore you get the wonder of me giving thanks to you. We express thanks out of the recognition that there's nothing that we could do to earn a gift. That we are given something, like in the case of what we're talking about Thanksgiving, we're given a place at the table, a place to belong, a family to be a part of, friends to be around, a church to worship with. And you did nothing to deserve that. None of us do. It's when we start to cut away at our own sufficiencies, at our own excuses, at our own busyness, that we begin to see how much we have been given. And when we come to that recognition, the busyness slows down and the expression of thanks blooms in us. But Martha, seeing that, didn't really understand it that way. I mean, what she does is she missed the fact that Jesus' presence was a gift. And so what this reminds me of a little bit is actually from my time in youth ministry, and specifically at youth camp. You don't know a greater horror than walking into a guy's dorm when it's time for pack-out day, specifically a middle school guy's dorm. There are smells of Axe, body spray everywhere. There's food all over every surface in the place. And in pack-out day, after a week of life-changing, awe-inspiring, tear-producing worship, everybody is excited. but you tell a middle school boy to clean up their room, oh man, they just become the most ungrateful. Sorry, middle schoolers in the room. I know you guys are better than that. But whenever you ask somebody to pick up a banana peel that's been under the couch for a week, or try to determine whose sock was left in the shower for a couple of days, all of a sudden it becomes the greatest injustice that's ever been done to anybody. And this indignation that how dare he ask me to clean up after somebody else? How dare he? And if we're being honest, when it comes to the way that we get indignant and the way that we express our anger toward those around us, we're not that different. When we're confronted with family members making what we perceive to be poor decisions or expressing opinions that we disagree with, we launch into indignation. We find ourselves breaking down the time we've been given by focusing our anger that others aren't holding themselves to the same accountability or the same level of guilt that we hold ourselves to. Instead of enjoying the grace of what we've been given, we choose to become angry at those around us because they're not sharing the same level of insecurity that we hold in ourselves. And here's the question that should weigh on your heart. If what you are doing, if you are serving, if you are providing an environment, if you are living out in the best way what Christ has called you to, living the abundant life, why should it make you angry if others don't do the same? If you're really living in the best, why should that make you angry? We don't get angry from holiness. We get angry from shame, from disappointment, from guilt, from discomfort, and from insecurity. And I need you to hear me in this, that I'm going to speak from, this is me speaking and preaching to myself. Usually my expression of indignation when I'm angry about these kind of things is less about justice or righteousness or serving other people. And usually for me, it's because I'm angry that I have to do more work. I get angry because I look at the decisions of a family member and say, well, now I'm going to have to pick up after them too. That's not holiness. That's selfishness. And this is a confession environment here, right? We're all friends telling truth to each other. My indignation so much more often comes from irritation of having to do more work rather than loving others as Jesus loves them. All right, so we have gotten after Martha here for a bit. What then is Jesus' response to Martha's tattling? Verses 41 and 42. But the Lord answered Martha, 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 you are anxious and troubled about many things. But one thing is necessary. Mary has chosen the good portion, which will not be taken away from her. Even while Martha is outwardly griping at Mary for not helping her, and then even to the extent of telling Jesus on her when Mary is right there, Jesus' response is not anger. He doesn't lash out at her. He's not irritable. I'm glad Jesus is not irritable like me. And he doesn't shame her. Jesus' response to Martha is pity. Because Jesus sees her and knows her heart and where it is. He knows her insecurity. He knows her fear. He knows her anxiety and her trouble. It's so striking to me that at the beginning of this, he says her name twice. It's not enough for him to say, address her. It is him saying, Martha, I see what you're feeling. I know what you're feeling. I understand it. And do you know that Jesus does the same with you? That when you find yourself in places of anxiety or fear or insecurity, Jesus knows that. He's not angry at you. He's not disappointed in you. He's not out to shame you. But his love strikes directly at our fears and insecurities of not being enough. And he does this directly to Martha. Jesus' answer, even though it could have been anger, was peaceful, was loving. And see this, while Jesus recognizes Martha's pain, he doesn't justify her anger. He gently and lovingly corrects. And that's why Jesus would be a better parent than we are. He makes a distinction that forms the main point of this whole message, though, to Martha, whenever he's trying to help her understand the right way. We have to let go of the good if it stands in the way of the best. He says, Martha, you're doing a lot of great things. It's great that the muffins didn't burn. It's great that the house is clean. That's a good thing. But because of your insistence to stay busy and fix all these things about your environment, you're missing the best. You're missing the fact that Jesus is literally here in your midst. And this is the march of our generation, you know. We're called to go and go and go and do and do and do and achieve and achieve and achieve. If you doubt that, what's the first thing that you ask a person when you meet them, when you're trying to get to know them? Hey, what do you do for a living? It's not who are you, what kind of, how'd you grow up? What is your occupation? How do you serve and produce for those around you? We measure our lives not in the hearts that we've loved, but in the amount of appointments we have in the day, the sports we play, the airline miles that we rack up. We stuff our lives so much with the good that we miss the best. Now, I came to understand this principle really well through Brazilian steakhouses. Anybody ever been to one of these places, like a Texas de Brazil, or if you want to say it fancy, churrascaria, like that? You have to snap, I guess. That's Portuguese, is a snap. Anyway, so whenever Adrian was meeting my parents, one of the things that we would do when we would have a big celebration dinner is we would go to Texas de Brazil in downtown Fort Worth. And if you've ever been to one of these Brazilian steakhouses, what's so awesome about it is that they come around and it's all-you-can-eat steak. And it's wonderful. It's delicious. And so when Adrian met my parents, we were going in, and my dad, as he's getting to know my wife, this is like kind of one of the first interactions, he says, all right, now, Adrian, you've never been here before, but let me give you a bit of strategy. And we walk in, and there's this wonderful salad bar. It has everything that you could possibly want on it for a salad, and there's all this cheesy bread and all that. He said, Adrian, you're going to see that, and it is absolutely a trap. Absolutely. Because what the restaurant wants you to do, I'm sorry if anybody in here owns a Brazilian steakhouse, what they want you to do is to fill yourself up on salad and bread so that when the steak comes, like, oh, I can't possibly do anymore. What better example do we have of stuffing ourselves with the good, but then missing the best? We have to have our eyes open to what Jesus wants in our lives. And Mary understood that though there were a lot of good things that she could be doing, that she could have been helping Martha do a bunch of stuff, she recognized, hey, there is something extraordinarily special about what's happening here. This is not something that happens every day. This is a place and a time where I can stop and know Jesus even as I am fully known. She understood that in order to experience this best part of her existence, she had to stop the busyness and just experience Christ. And here's the beautiful part. The way that Jesus closes this, he says, Mary has chosen the good portion, which will not be taken away from her. You know, the kind of prestige and esteem, if you're a parent, clean houses or clean minivans, all the things that we do in this life that we build up, these prizes, these awards, all the things that we look at, all of it can be taken from us. Nothing, no day, no moment is assured in your life. Every heartbeat that we have, every breath that we take is a grace. But even though everything in our lives can be taken away from us, Jesus cannot be. Our time spent with our Savior, offering up our hearts, our fears, our insecurities, that is something that can never be taken away from you. You can fill your life with all sorts of other things, and all of those things will pass away, but Jesus is the foundation that remains. When we are looking at the way that we are trying to live our lives, we so often focus on the frustrations, on the pains, on the disappointments. And what Jesus says is, look, those are very real things, and dealing with those things is very good. But don't focus on the good and miss the best in your life. Don't miss the best. As we close, I want to share a story with you from my life that when I was in college, I had a really, I was a part of what was called a rec team. And so we traveled around to a bunch of different camps, and one of the camps that we went to was called Camp Buckner. And while I was serving at that camp back in 2006, something like that, actually 2005, there was a moment where I had it was a huge moment of devotion, a kind of turning point in my life, a time where I was just, laying it all out before Jesus, and it was a very special thing. So about probably 20 years pass, and this past spring, I had an opportunity to go back to Camp Buckner for a conference. And so, you go to a conference, you're going to sit in, you're going to be doing all these great things, connecting with people, stuff like that. But I felt this burden of returning to that space. And I had a lot of reasons not to do it. I mean, there were a bunch of other of my peers that were there, that were serving, were praying, were teaching, doing conference things like that. But I had this bigger burden. So I left the conference and went hiking back up into the hills. I have a picture of it. I think if we got, yeah, there we go. And I was able to go back and find that cross where I had before spent that time of devotion. And there were a lot of reasons for me not to be up there. I was busy. There was stuff going on. There were opportunities for networking. There were, opportunities for snacks. I mean, there's lots of things. Too much of my life circles around food. But in that moment, I'm going to tell you that sitting there with the remembering of 20 years of life since the last time that I had sat before that cross and clung to it, feeling the splinters in my fingers, was the heaviest and most beautiful devotional moment, one of the most beautiful devotional moments of my life. There was no reason why I should have done that. There was no reason why I should have gone out there. Nobody was pressuring me to. Nobody even knew I was going to do it. But I understood that in order to experience the best of my life with Christ, I had to be willing to sacrifice the good. What Christ wants from you, He doesn't care about a clean house. He doesn't care about the rewards and the things that we build ourselves up with. He doesn't care how many likes your Instagram post made. He doesn't care how many people you host for Thanksgiving. He doesn't care about, well, I say that. He cares about those things, but man, He wants you and He wants your heart. And if you go through this Thanksgiving season and occupy yourself every moment of every day and you miss the opportunity to seek the heart of Christ, then you will be letting go of the best for the good. When we look at Mary and Martha, they both had decisions that they were going to make. And Mary chose the better. I don't know what may be weighing on your heart today. I know for many of you, fear of the future is there. That insecurity of the way that other people think of you. You may be dealing with sadness at loss. Or maybe it is just an absolutely full calendar, and you know that this coming week, when you put that away message up on your email, that you're going to come back to a mountain of things that you have to do. But as you come up to this time, we all stand like Martha before Jesus. Will we choose to cling to the things that are good, or will we choose to cling to the one who is the best? Shortly, Todd's going to come up and lead us in an invitation song. Every week we do these times of invitation. We tell folks, look, if you've never made that, if you have lived your life well and done a lot of great things and built up a lot of good things around yourself, but have never made that decision to follow Jesus as Savior and Lord, do not let another minute pass. You are not guaranteed tomorrow. There is nothing standing between you and the one who's the best. And if today you want to begin that relationship with Christ, our ministers will be up here ready to talk with you, counsel you about ways to go. You may find yourself today also visiting this church and have been coming for a while and say, you know what, I'm ready. I've been a part of the worship here, and I feel like this is my home, and this is a time that I want to join in as a member of what God is doing here at Austin Baptist Church. That will be also open as well. But one last thing that I want to offer to you, that as our ministers are down here in the front, if you find yourself in the midst of this season overburdened and fearful and insecure about what's to come, don't bear that burden alone. We're happy to pray with you, to walk with you through these kind of things, not just even in here, in our Bible fellowship groups that are about to happen in the next hour. Part of that, of embracing the best, is having others come to share the burden of the good. And so I would encourage you that wherever you are in this part of your life, that you would come and that you would place yourself before Christ and for his grace.